The launch window of a video game is often critical for its success. Receive praise and you will sell millions, but make your fans angry and they will turn their back on you and never look back. In this video, we look at 10 games that totally disappointed us when they launched. But thankfully, developers sometimes fix their mistakes, as these 10 games are now very fun to play. Here are 10 games that totally redeemed themselves. When Destiny launched back in September 2014, there were a lot of problems surrounding the game. The game had 23 story missions and 5 strikes, there were 3 classes with 2 subclasses playable each, and the Vault of Glass was the only PvE game. There was no PvP endgame, and the leveling system and RNG were a complete mess. After releasing tons of updates and the Taken King and Rise of Iron expansions, Destiny has changed a lot. The team at Bungie has learned how to make their game fun. All those lessons have been applied to Destiny 2 as well, adding more story, more endgame, and just generally more fun to the game. Destiny, you were a big mess, but you totally redeemed yourself. In 2016, we saw the release of one of the most anticipated games of the year. No Man's Sky made major promises, but failed to live up to the hype. The game was not worth its $60 price tag and felt more like a $30 early access title. The lack of any form of multiplayer was a slap in the face to many gamers. But 1 year later, Hello Games has completely revamped the game.
Explorers' constructions are now shared online and can be visited by other travelers.
No Man's Sky now has land vehicles, base buildings, more quests, more story, graphical improvements, and a form of multiplayer. No Man's Sky might still not be the perfect game, but it's actually fun to play, and the developers provided continued support to make their game better. No Man's Sky was a disaster, but thanks to a major overhaul of basically everything in the game, it has now become a game that's worth your time.
Uncover a strange new race of travelers.
私の空風見せてあげる
Never in the history of video games has a game been shipped more bare-boned than Street Fighter V. The limited selection of characters, the grind to unlock the ones that are actually in the game, the abysmal servers, and the lack of story mode really hurt the reputation of the series. Since it released in 2016, a lot has changed though. There are combo trials, weekly challenges, and a cinematic story mode.
Huh? Are you sure about that?
The in-game shop is working and Capcom is finally punishing rage quitters. The character roster has been expanded significantly and the developers are still tweaking and nerfing characters to create the perfect balance. When it comes to content, Street Fighter V is now finally where it needed to be at launch.
This is your ultimate. I feel sorry.
Leave it, Uncle. It's not important.
When Diablo 3 launched on PC, it required players to always be online. This caused some server troubles in the first week, but after that, everything seemed to be working fine. However, what Diablo 3 lacked was a fun endgame. After finishing the rather short story, there wasn't much to do, and the existence of a real money auction house totally messed up the loot system. Since that 2012 release, a lot has changed. The game ditched the auction house. There are now 17 difficulty levels instead of the original 4. More variety in gear, a new class, and Blizzard added the glorious adventure mode. And of course, there's more story added to the game thanks to the Reaper of Souls and the Rise of the Necromancer expansions. Even though Diablo 3 is already 5 years old, it still stands the test of time thanks to some major improvements.
All who threaten the balance, beware.
SimCity has had one of the most troubled video game launches ever. The city building game required gamers to be always online, which upset a lot of players. This resulted in a major disaster as players had difficulty logging in for weeks. In the end, the studio that made the game even had to close its doors. Now, SimCity is finally playable offline, and if you want to play online, you can do that as well. On top of everything, Electronic Arts has added mod support. SimCity is finally at the stage where it should have been at launch. Is it good, and did the game redeem itself from its horrible launch? Absolutely. But it's not the best game in its genre anymore.
Over here!
The MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV wasn't much fun at launch. Bad lighting effects, copy-paste landscapes, unrideable chocobos, an awful story are just a few of its faults. Did you know that even the mouse controls were server-based? This meant there was always some lag on your input. Square Enix decided to destroy the 1.0 version of the game with a giant virtual meteor crashing into it. A new director came on board and 2.0 was built on new technology with a new story and new gameplay mechanics. Now, Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn is one of the biggest MMOs out there. With Heavensward and Stormblood, it already got 2 big expansions that add more story, raids, and features. Square Enix certainly did right by the fans. Halo 5 Guardians was a major release for the Xbox One, but the series was always known for its multiplayer features. And that's the area in which Halo 5 fell short. Multiplayer almost felt like an afterthought, and many elements from previous Halo games were suddenly not there anymore. But thankfully, 343 Industries has released 10 free updates for the game since then. These updates slowly restored all the features and modes Halo fans demanded from the start. It's almost like Halo 5 Guardians is a completely different game now. While they didn't fix the rather disappointing single-player campaign, we're glad at least the multiplayer is where it should be now.
With Grand Theft Auto Online, Rockstar Games is looking to bring the heart of the Grand Theft Auto experience to a living online world with multiple players.
Every release in the Grand Theft Auto series is a magical moment in the gaming industry. Grand Theft Auto 5 was a great release and certainly didn't disappoint. However, the extremely popular GTA Online wasn't even part of the game when it launched. This mode arrived as a content update and it was a broken mess. Servers were unstable and the online gameplay was messy. But Rockstar Games kept working on its online mode and that sure paid off.
You're late. What kept you?
Thanks to the addition of countless updates, GTA Online is now a virtual playground full of races, death matches, and heists. The online mode has seen over 20 updates by now, and it feels like there's still more coming, even though we can't help but wonder about the single-player story expansions we were all looking forward to. The release of Splatoon on the Wii U was a major surprise. It was a completely new IP and didn't feature any of the familiar Nintendo heroes. Even more surprising was that this online shooter lacked many modes that are considered standard for its genre. There were just a few maps and the diversity in weapons was pretty bad. Thankfully, Nintendo gave the game plenty of updates including new maps, raising the level cap, adding options for private and ranked matches, and of course extra weapons and cosmetic gear. One year later, Splatoon was the game it was supposed to be at launch, and thankfully, Nintendo learned from its mistakes when it launched Splatoon 2 for the Nintendo Switch.
2, 3.
Rainbow Six Siege is one of the biggest stories of redemption. The online team-based shooter was in development for a long time, and when it released, the reception was, well, not that positive. Visual downgrades and a lack of modes and maps hurt the game's launch, even though the gameplay was solid. Ubisoft kept adding maps and modes over the first year. This continued support made sure its user base grew consistently. Major updates 1 year after launch quadrupled the number of players compared with the launch. With 20 million active users, Rainbow Six Siege is now the dark horse of the online multiplayer FPS genre. Those were 10 games that started out bad but eventually became good. Do you agree with our list? Let us know in the comments, on social media, or on our Discord channel. See you next time.
Let's find out!
I hate when she does that.